Well, I've decided a long time ago to do the following, that in any circumstance which is only intellectual, I will always put in something which is sentimental. And I remember that at one point during the war, I was arrested by the Germans because I wanted to cross the Atlantic and to not get into the German Hitler army. And I was in a prison, and it was horrible. It was a cellar in the city of Metz, and there was only a window to let a little air in, and there were, normally you could have 2 or 3 prisoners, and they had up to 40 or 50, just pressed once against the other. And waiting until they are interrogated seriously. And I said, my God, this is horrible. And would you be able to be happy in a situation like this? And I said to myself, well, you should try. Why don't you try to be happy in one of the worst circumstances of your life? And then I had an idea. I got a pencil from one of the boys, from the people there, and I went towards the door. And on the door, which was a new, very good door in that cellar of that building, I began to write a novel on top. That I fell in love with a beautiful girl in the mountains of Himalaya. And you know, and I wrote it, and I wrote it, and I wrote it, and I completely forgot that I was in prison. So that I gave to myself the proof that even in the worst circumstances, there is always something which you can do with your brain and your heart, not to be affected and to say, oh, they're going to kill me, that's going to happen, this is horrible, that will last so many days, etc., etc. And finally, after about a week, they let me go because I couldn't find anything against me. But I've never forgotten this, that I was able to be happy even in a prison. You were always influenced by all kinds of things, to be unhappy, to work harder, to make a competition in your life. It was very, very difficult to be young, especially adolescent, when the job question came up.
Right.
And it was not so easy. And young people were not taught to be... And the funny thing is that it is mostly the young people who were happy who got the job.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my. I could give examples.
Yes.
I could give examples of where a chap, a very important guy, was offering a job, and then there were about 3 or 4 people outside of the room, you know, and each of us, I was there too, and we were waiting to get in and to have a talk with this man. And I remember that when I went to talk to him, he had there 2 people whom he had not dealt with. And he asked the woman, he said, are you really happy with the job I offer you? Oh, I would be fantastically happy. Okay, you got it. He didn't even ask her any question. You know, how happiness can be determining in your life. A high official in a government does not want to be bothered by people who have lots of doubts. They prefer to take people who are devoted to what they believe. There is no doubt. It's something which we should not forget. There's also the fact that all the marriages, all the couples, they are born from happiness.
Yeah, of course. They stay
This is
together.
very, very fundamental. The feeling of happiness was an indication that this would give them a happy life.
Yeah.
By the way, the question of the tour around the sun, I've never even gotten to it, because living in Europe, in Alsace-Lorraine, which was challenged by Hitler, by all the thing, in the family you had only one talk, who is the next minister coming into government? What are the Germans now going to invent again? And the year and the time was something which was so daily that we never came to the point of dreaming and of thinking how many times we went around the earth. You are the first one now who makes me thinking of that. And now that I'm older and married, and in a country like Costa Rica and in the United States, there it's much easier to think in terms of the place in the world. But you have places, I'm sure, but at the time of Hitler, that was completely, totally impossible. You have to think even what's going to happen next year, next week. What are they going to come up with? They were putting people in prison for no reason whatsoever.
Remember that your heart is moved by this gravity grace of the sun.
Yeah,
right?
we are not taking cognizance of the role of the sun in everything that happens on this planet.
That's right.
There's no doubt.
That's right.
It's people don't think about that.
No.
They look at the summer, the sun for the summertime and the beach, and that's about it.
Yes.
You are right. That's a very important phenomenon.
Well, I think it's utterly remarkable that you and I should meet just now.
Yeah. Well, I think some people told me that
I think so.
Why couldn't it be a little bit closer together? I mean, it's not far apart.
We have the same views, the same understanding of the totality of the world.
Yeah.
Because there are many things which are very negative. My God.
Oh, yeah. Well, I consider those things to be the detritus of the Dark Ages. The remnants. You fix the government, and I'll fix the church. How about that?
Well, here is a paper which I wrote about a year or so ago, which is the absolute urgent need for proper Earth government. That our world government is not what it should be.
Right.
And here I have some figures which are very revealing. Namely, that the Earth speaks to me. It's a dialogue with the Earth, where the Earth says to me, after I have made a kind of view of the future to the year, the highest level of the world population, and then the Earth says to me, yes, but I hear that at the present rate, you will be 9.3 billion people in the year 2050 and stabilize only at 10.7 billion in the year 2200, which means 4.8 billion more people than today. You will increase by 80 million people every year. You will end by destroying me. That is what in official circles is being accepted, and it's not being counteracted by anyone. It is incredible. We have increased from 2 billion to 6 billion 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it goes on like this.
That is the biggest problem we face.
Yeah.
Overpopulation is destroying the oceans, destroying the forests, destroying the natural life, destroying the livability of this planet. It has to stop. And,
but the U.S. is against. Bush was against it.
Of course.
Because we at the United Nations, we convinced the United States to look into this incredible population increase to come. And they asked their embassies to make sure that the people were not having children just because they didn't know how to make love. In other words, they made love and nobody ever taught them that they can have only 1 or 2 children, which they wanted. They didn't want to have all those children, but they had all these children. And the UN was able to convince, and we even got a reduction of about 2 billion people over the last 60 years, 50 or 60 years. And with Bush, what he did was order every embassy of the United States around the world never anymore to give any advice to these countries that you can make love without having necessarily children.
That's the fault of the church.
Can you imagine? And the church, of course,
the church
is behind
is
it too.
what's behind it.
You have to take the entire system of the United Nations. The world today is confronted with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of dreams, new inventions. Having now we have 192 countries, which we never had before. It's mind-boggling what this human species has on this planet. And the United Nations and its 32 specialized agencies is following all this. And regarding population and the increase of the world population, this has become a monumental big problem at the United Nations. And they are trying by every means to have all governments have a control of the population. So that this is all done. What you say about the Christians, the UN would not even look into it. Well, I'm not going to discuss God or non-God and so on. You, country so-and-so, you have a growth of population which is so much, which is irresponsible for the world. So either we are going to catastrophe, and we have the figures. You get the figures when this coming up. When now we are from 2 billion, we are 6 billion, even more this year. From 6 billion in the year 2050, we are going to be 8 billion. And we have no view even that this will stop, and probably at the next century, we will be 10 billion people on this planet more. And the strange thing is it's not in the West. The United States is losing has been lost 50 million people in the last few years. Why? Because the families do not want to have more children because it's too expensive to put them into schools. So you have an incredible situation, whereas in the poor countries, they are not even thinking about this. And the United Nations has been trying to have every developing countries to teach their married people to make love without having children. They do not want to have 7 to 10 children and not knowing what to do with them. They will be very happy with 2 or 3. But it was so difficult to tell them that they should do this at the moment of life. And now that most countries were agreed to that, Mr. Bush has withdrawn everything from every embassy to have to deal with population increase. Why? Because probably he thinks the more people in the developing countries there will be, the more there will be things sold to them. But at the same time, very smartly, what is he doing? He is closing the borders. Because in about 10 or 20 years, these young people who are born in the poor countries, they will have no jobs there. And then they will knock at the United Nations and the United States, and the United States will have covered everything and closed it. So that this is the situation which you can see from the population. And of course, with the Catholics, you don't even have a debate with them. The Catholics in the totality, when you look at the Chinese, the billions of people you have in China.
A hero. You have been a hero because you saw what needed to be done and you did it. So congratulations.
Thank you.